Turning to domestic politics, the Georgia runoff is actually going on now. Voters are already headed to the polls. Of course, this is Raphael Warnock versus Herschel Walker. Not really the rematch, but neither one of them was able to get past that 50% benchmark in the November vote. So that sent them to this runoff. Final day of which of in-person voting will be next week on Tuesday. So we're exactly 1 week out from knowing the results, maybe, depending on how fast they count the ballots, of who will be the next senator from the state of Georgia. Of course, Democrats don't need this seat to have control of the Senate, but the stakes are still very significant because the next election cycle in 2024, Democrats have a very difficult map to defend, including Joe Manchin is up in West Virginia. That's going to be a tough one. John Tester is up as well. Both of those are going to be very hard seats to defend, so it matters a lot whether they are able to win the seat and have a little bit of margin for error going into the next election cycle. Okay, so that's the backstory. We do have a little bit of polling. Let's put this up on the screen. This is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. They have an interesting age breakdown here. Warnock apparently leads voters between the ages of 18 and 49, so under the age of 50, by a 24-point margin. So he's cleaning up there. However, Walker has a 9-point edge among older voters, older than 50, and 90% of those older voters are extremely motivated versus only 75% of the voters younger than 50 who share that intensity. This poll, the top line numbers here, Saagar, commissioned by the AARP, has Warnock at 51, Walker at 47. That is, though, within the margin of error of 4.4 percentage points. And it also shows that Warnock has a sizable lead, 54-39 over Walker among independent voters. So Walker has done a better job so far, according to this poll, in the runoff of consolidating Republicans completely behind him, which, you know, Georgia's still a pretty conservative state. So in the original voting, he had an issue with, you know, Republican voters who were actually voting for Brian Kemp and then splitting off and voting for Warnock. Here, he seems to have consolidated the Republican vote, but he is behind in terms of independents, according to this poll.
Yeah. One
of the things that's interesting here is the former president, Trump, has decided, let's put this up on the screen, he's decided he is going to stay away from Georgia. It says he's going to have a limited role in the Georgia runoff. You will recall that the last time we had a pair of Georgia runoffs, Trump did come to the state. I think he did 2 separate rallies, didn't end up working out too well for them. Trump, of course, is basically the entire reason that Herschel Walker is the Republican nominee, but he and Walker have both decided that it is best if he stays away at this point.
Yeah, lots to say about this, which I think is interesting. Namely with Trump, and what they point to is that exit data actually shows us that 1 in 3 Georgia Republicans says, quote, they are not supporters of the Make America Great Again movement, and that those people voted over 90% for Brian Kemp, but split pretty evenly for Herschel Walker.
Right.
So clearly, MAGA and Trump, the imprimatur of the Stop the Steal and just like general craziness, not sitting well with a lot of more traditional type Republicans who had no problem voting for Brian Kemp, no problem voting for Brad Raffensperger. But with Walker, they're like, no, this is just a bridge too far. And, you know, not just beyond the polls, on the actual money side, Krystal, Walker is getting outspent almost 10-1. I mean, Warnock has got some like $30 or $40 million that he spent on the race so far. And I'm almost getting the sense that the Republicans have effectively given up on this race. Like, you don't see major Republicans traveling down to Georgia in the same way. They went ahead and they held the Senate elections, even though some people said, oh, well, maybe we should wait to see if Herschel Walker wins. Like, he's clearly, you know, like they have it, they clearly are not believing here in Washington, from the NRSC, Rick Scott, and others, that this is a winnable race in any way. Which, honestly, I mean, look, it's still a close race. Like, it came into a runoff.
It's definitely a close
came
race.
within 1 point. You know, he didn't win more than 50% of the vote. Now you have that third-party candidate who's no longer on the ballot in an actual up and down. So it's not outside the realm of possibility, but I think the Republicans see the national tides and after the midterms and are so deflated, on top of Trump himself not wanting to attach himself to Walker, that at this point, like, they look at it almost as a lost cause, which is kind of crazy when you consider the Georgia runoff race.
I mean, it could also be that they know that if Walker does win, like there's a possibility you're going to have some problems there.
And so they already lost the
road.
Senate, so they're like, well, why would you want
Yeah,
this?
I mean, listen, I don't think they've totally given up on it. They would obviously rather win this race than lose this race.
Right.
But to your point about the money spent, let's go to the fourth element here. We've got Dems outspending Republicans on the air so far by the tune of $37.4 million to $20.2 million. This also, though, just tracks with the way spending went in the midterms overall, where Trump sucks up so much of the money and so much of the pie and is very stingy about it, does not spend on even the candidates like Herschel Walker that are there because of him. Then you had Rick Scott, head of the NRSC, spending wildly early on races like Colorado and these places they didn't have a prayer at, and a lot of questions. I mean, Republicans are calling for the NRSC to be audited because of the wild spending and waste of resources from there. I mean, Mitch McConnell has really become the big money player and, apparently can't do it alone here. And I think Democrats also just have a stronger grassroots fundraising base that they can go back to. And I really attribute that and blame Donald Trump for that in terms of the Republicans, because the grassroots base essentially gives to him over and over and over again, and he hits them up constantly rather than, donating, for example, to Herschel Walker here. We covered how Trump was technically raising money for Walker, but if you read the fine print, 90% of the money was actually going into his coffers. There are a bunch of other Republicans who employed the same exact tactic. So anyway, that's how things are looking. We do have some early vote numbers that we can bring you. Grain of salt. Who knows what this means ultimately, but it's from our friend Daniel Shanian. He says, at this early point, 6% of the people who have already voted in the Georgia runoff had not voted in November. So you have a sizable chunk of people who are voting now who actually didn't show up at the polls in November. Who are those people? Well, 69% of them are under the age of 29. A plurality is black, 42%, though he says that might be driven by which counties actually have early voting. So this would be, a positive sign for Democrats, again, one you should take with a grain of salt. He also yesterday put out an update on that, and more people had voted. Still, you had about 6% of the total who did not vote in November, who were just showing up for this runoff. And it continues to be the fact that these new voters who did not vote in the midterms are overwhelmingly young. And we gave you the numbers before from the poll of how well Raphael Warnock is doing with younger voters, so it would be a positive indication for him.
Yeah, I do think it is really crazy that we are, a week or so out from this. It doesn't feel like it for a lot of the people in the national press, but I do want to underscore something that we covered right after the midterms. There's a huge difference between a 51-49 Senate and a 50-50.
Oh, yeah.
Committee power, your ability, you don't need the vice president for tie-breaking votes. There's all for a nomination perspective, it actually lowers the power of Joe Manchin. You could lose him on a single vote and still win big one. So 51-49 is a very, very different environment for the entire Biden administration in its latter 2 years than a 50-50 Senate, one that we've really been living with right now. It sounds like it's on a lower level, but it could explode out on, especially judicial nominees, right?
Yeah, that's
EPA,
an important one.
the Federal Reserve. I'm thinking of three major ones, all that were impacted by a 50-50 Senate, where somebody was not confirmed, where they almost certainly would have been in a 51-49 environment because of just one defection.
Being able to lose Joe Manchin is really important because, oftentimes he does not go along with the rest of the caucus. It expands what you're able to do. And as I said before, could really make the difference in the next election cycle when Democrats have a very tough map to defend. Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now. And Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.